Shannon.
Okay, we've got almost 100 people here today, so welcome. And Dr. Maxwell is going to start with just a brief PowerPoint, sharing some updates based on new information we have, as well as some answers to questions that we've been seeing by email and on social media. We know there's a lot of interest in what it's going to look like to reopen schools. So Bob, I'm going to let you share, and then after this PowerPoint, if you have questions, please enter those in the chat, either as a question to all, or you can send a question directly to me, and we will share that question, and Dr. Maxwell will do his best to answer.
All right, thank you, Shannon. All right, thank you. Before we get started, just a couple comments. I do want to send a thank you out to our reopening task force committee members, which are staff, students, parents, and community members. They've been working extremely hard over the last 4 weeks, trying to put together several reopening plans depending on different situations. I would like to also thank our audience today because comments, questions, and new information, I'll be sharing that in the PowerPoint. So hopefully I'll be able to answer some of the questions. I would like to also just add that in my nearly 30 years in education, this is the most fluid and ever-changing situation I've ever seen in my career. And so this is really evolving at a quite rapid pace and with a lot of changes. So again, appreciate you taking the time today. And so we'll get started. I'll go through this PowerPoint and then we'll open it up to some questions. All right, Courtney, next slide, please. So summer meals distribution. So I just want to remind folks that they continue at Jefferson Elementary. Free for all students ages 1 through 18, grab and go breakfast and lunches, Monday through Friday, 11:30 to 12:30 at Jefferson Elementary. So that'll run until August 21st. So if you know someone that is in need of breakfast or lunch, please direct them to Jefferson Elementary. All right, next. So just another reminder that summer school has started, especially for elementary and our students participating in extended school year. So that's going very well this week. So just a reminder that that is occurring, as well as upcoming will be the middle school. And that will start August 3rd and run through August 13th, Monday through Thursday. And high school, that has started, and that is for students who needed to make up an incomplete or to retrieve credits. And so that has started, and that will end on July 31st. Just a reminder, especially for, in particular, new enrollments, there are new immunization requirements. This is a significant change from previous year. Where effective August 1st, students have to have their immunizations in order to enroll and attend school. In the past, that was not necessarily the case. There was a grace period of 30 days to 60 days. That no longer exists. So if you have new students that are going to be enrolling or students that need additional immunizations, please feel free to check out our website or contact Michelle Hyatt, our lead nurse, if you have any questions. Just a quick update on Lincoln Middle School renovation expansion. Construction has started. I believe I took these pictures on Monday. And this is kind of the outline plan for what it will look like as far as the new addition and different changes that will be happening over the next 2 years at Lincoln Middle School. Transportation cooperative update, just to let you know that we are still waiting to hear whether we will receive a grant to fund this project. We were hoping to hear earlier this month, but we have not heard anything yet. So we're hoping that we will receive the grant and be able to start construction. So probably most of us are here today because we want to hear what is the latest news on reopening of schools. Again, I want to thank all the community members. They've been working very, very hard and continue to work in refining those recommendations. Not all the recommendations will be in this PowerPoint today. I'm planning to have a more in-depth, detailed report to the board tonight. But again, the final reopening draft won't be available till August 1st. So again, 9 subcommittees. We're looking at recommendations that are going to be based on directives from the governor, the Department of Health, and OSPI, the Office Superintendent of Public Instruction. Next. So the state asked us to consider 3 different scheduling concepts, split or rotating schedules with continuous, what they call continuous remote learning, a phased in opening, or distance learning 2.0. We are going to concentrate on the split or rotating schedule and the continuous learning 2.0. So right now we are working on some what we call hybrid schedules where students would attend some school face-to-face and would have some school online. The other plan that we're developing is all students online all the time. That's what we're calling continuous learning 2.0. In both these models, we are taking a look at offering face-to-face instruction for those students most in need that are unable due to their skills to access learning online. So right now, the hybrid model, I don't have a grid, but we're getting close to having one. But we're looking at, for secondary students right now, that would be high school and middle school, attending at least in person 2 days a week and 3 days online. The elementary, we're looking at 4.5 days in person each week with a half day online. That's very preliminary and subject to change, but that's what we're looking at. So the goal from the Superintendent of Public Instruction is to try to get students in school, and we want to make sure we can do that, but do it safely for our staff and students. Continuous learning will look like it did in the spring, but much more robust and enhanced. So a lot of time has been spent on the health and safety requirements. I will say that masks are going to be required. That is not an option. That is a state directive. There are very, very few exceptions due to medical conditions. So I want to make that clear. That's been a question that we've received quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. We will be doing health screenings. Right now, what that will look like is an online assertion where parents or students would go online and say whether they had symptoms or not due to COVID. And if they answer yes, then they will not attend school that day until we have further clarification and contact by our health nurse. If we do observe students or staff that may be showing signs, and we'll do a more in-depth health screening at school, taking temperature, that type of thing. We will be coming out with guidelines that if students, staff, or any essential visitors are sick or have been exposed, we're going to ask them to follow the directions right now, which would be stay home. And if they have been in close contact, that's immediate contact with someone with COVID-19, that would be a 14-day. We are looking at physical distancing and what that will look like in our buildings with students and staff. We know that won't be possible, such as in the hallways at times during some passing periods, but we're going to do our best to reduce any chances of students or staff coming within 6 feet of each other. Next slide. So again, we are going to be, hygiene practices will be emphasized. So washing hands when they arrive, before meals, after being outside, obviously going to the restroom, before leaving school. We have an enhanced cleaning and disinfecting schedule that's being developed that we're taking a look at. If someone does develop symptoms or show signs that they are ill, they will be evaluated at the health room, and if needed, we'll make sure that they are isolated from other folks, and we'll make a contact home so they can be picked up and taken home. We are increasing our ventilation to make sure that we're pulling in as much fresh air to maximize the amount of air entering our learning areas and spaces, and we'll be doing a lot more programs outside to give students an opportunity to get fresh air during the day. Again, physical wellness, we have screening things that will be in place. We have masks, what we're called masking, and also hygiene. I talked a little bit about that. The other piece I haven't talked a little bit about is social emotional wellness. We are looking at a screening for all students. We're also looking at enhanced training for our school counselors to be able to address the social emotional needs of our students. We're looking at the social emotional health of our staff as well as students. And so we're also looking at regular social emotional lessons that we will be delivering for students. We're going to be working with, in particular, high school students to provide more information on self-advocacy and referral if they are struggling. Services and referrals, so we're going to be looking at a procedure for social emotional health issues that may arise during the day. All this is going to take some additional training, and we are in the process of setting up those trainings for August. Again, enrollment, human resources, one of the things that we're looking at right now is monitoring student enrollment, taking a look at withdrawals and transfers, substitute training as needed. So a lot of pieces we need to take a look at. Food service and meal planning, we're looking at both on-site and off-site if we have to go to all distance learning. That's a piece that we're taking a look at right now. So food service, right now we'll be making sure that we're doing that with social distancing in mind, which may mean that some students may be eating in cafeterias, some may be eating in classrooms. Transportation, transportation is one of the areas where we do not have the 6-foot rule mandate, but we are looking at ways that we would reduce the number of students riding the bus and trying to social distance or physical distance on the bus as much as possible. Next. Again, operations-wise and facilities, we're looking at additional signage, reconfiguring our classrooms, making sure we can maximize space for students, and making sure that we have that 6-foot distance when they're in the classrooms. Again, PPE gear, that's personal protection equipment. So face coverings, disposable face coverings, face shields if required, and sanitizer if required. Technology, we are looking at a one-to-one deployment of Chromebooks. And so students would have the same Chromebook every day, whether they're at school. For more of our intermediate to secondary students, we are looking at having those students take those back and forth from home to school. So again, that would enhance the safety measures where students would not be sharing a Chromebook. They would have their own that would be issued to them. We are working to support families with no connectivity. It's relatively small in our district. We're very lucky, but we do have some places where we do not have connectivity, so we're working on plans. We're working on to continue to enhance our support and repair process if we have to go remote. And we're looking at some additional technology and training support, not only for our staff, but for our families as well, so they have a better idea of how to navigate uh, the learning management systems, which we will be condensing down to 2. This is recent from last night. So the WIA has modified the 2021 sports season. What they're calling season 1 fall. Right now, we'll only have cross country, slow pitch softball, girls swim, golf, and tennis. Football has been moved back to what they're calling season 3, along with volleyball, girls soccer, and boys soccer. So again, this is a change. This is changed just last night. And so we updated this slide this morning. So a lot of changes to sports, and continue to see how this will evolve. If school is closed and we're totally online, the sports seasons will be canceled. So communications, again, we're working on a detailed plan for communication. These are just some of the very general highlights. We're going to be using our district website for the communications. We'll be sending out emails. We're trying to reduce the number of emails based on feedback from our community members. We'll be looking at social media, press releases, as appropriate, text or mail, definitely signage, and of course we've started the Zoom meetings. Teaching and learning, this committee has been hard at work trying to pull together a plan for in-person and online learning. So we're really looking at making sure our technology access is available. We're going to minimize the number of emails to students and families. We're going to standardize assessments, assignments and information when they will occur. Right now, they're looking at a Monday morning. We're looking at refining and narrowing down the general tools and platforms and making that standard across classes. Also having a weekly outline of assignments sent to families. So we know that our online learning needs to be definitely more structured and more robust than it had been in the spring. It was very difficult in the spring, given 3 days to switch over without any training or time to really develop a clear plan. We are working this summer on having a much more refined online program. We're also looking at an online program regardless if we're back to in-person. So I know that's been a question asked by many in the community. We're still working on what that will look like, and when we have a better idea, we'll be sharing that out. Again, providing those learning experience, we're looking at doing more recording and posting, and having very structured office hours and small group instruction available as well. Next. So again, that's a very, very quick and concise PowerPoint. Hopefully that's been helpful and may have answered some of your questions. So we'll open it up to questions at this point.
All right, awesome, thank you. There are a lot of questions in the chat box already, so we're going to try to work our way from first questions up until the most recent. So Bob, you did address the potential for an online only option. So there was a question about that, but you did address that. Another question, HVAC projects be complete prior to school starting? So with increased fresh air in August, will the air be cooled?
We're going to really take a look at probably monitoring the daily temperatures. Typically in the summer with our buildings that do not have air conditioning or cooling, we typically will pull air in at the night, during the night when it's cool. Unfortunately, we're just in the process of bidding this coming year the rest of our air conditioning installation for our elementary schools. But we're going to do our best to keep the buildings as cool and comfortable as we can for those students and staff during late August or early September when we typically have higher temperatures.
Okay. And then you did also address that there will be changes to online learning. It's going to look different than it did in the spring. There's a question, when will we know what it will look like so that we can make alternative plans if what the district is offering is not appropriate for our kids?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you very much. We know that we definitely have to enhance our online offering. We are shooting for August 1st to know what that will look like specifically, so then parents can make the decision of what they would like to do as far as enrollment for the upcoming school year.
Okay. Will there be access to mental health supports throughout the district when or if we go remote?
Yeah, we will, whether if we do go remote or it's a hybrid of face-to-face and remote, we are looking at ways that we can continue mental health support and access. So I know that our social emotional learning group has been working on that. They have a lot of recommendations. And so now we're looking at narrowing down those recommendations and working on how we'll implement those recommendations, but either in person or online.
Okay, thank you. Related to masks, are there going to be times when it's okay for students to remove masks? When would that be? And are they allowed to remove masks if they're 6 or more feet away from others?
So the masks, the Health and Safety Committee has been working on the masks. We've been in contact with the Department of Health, and also we have a physician on that group as well. So right now they are taking a look at how we can have some breaks throughout the day where students could go outside, remove their masks. One of the things we're looking at is recess, having groups in cohorts by classes, and encouraging them to wear them during recess, but maybe not required. That's the latest recommendation. That's still in draft form. But again, we're trying to look at ways throughout the day where we could take some breaks where they could go outside, remove their masks. Inside, it will be required to keep those masks on, even if they are greater than 6 feet apart.
Okay. A question about which learning management systems we will be using and what kind of training or resources will be available for students and parents.
Great question. So right now we're looking at Seesaw to continue that learning platform, and Google Classrooms will be the other learning platform for intermediate through high school. So those will be the 2 platforms that we're landing on right now. We are also looking at how we can also provide some additional print materials as needed. That was a request from parents that we saw quite a bit from the spring, is more access to print materials. So we are working on that plan as well.
Okay, the next question, if a student has to isolate for 2 weeks, will teachers automatically provide assignments to do during that period, or will the student participate virtually, or what will that look like if a student needs to isolate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that depends on whether we're doing a hybrid and online or all online. Obviously, if we're all online, then they would be able to participate online. Given a hybrid situation, I imagine that we'll be able to provide or at least notify what assignments were worked on that day if that student missed it. And then during the online portion, they would have the opportunity to engage in learning.
Will Running Start be an option for qualifying high school students?
Yes, Running Start is an option for those high school students.
Let's see. A suggestion to release assignments for the following week on a Friday evening. That's something that we could consider. So that all of the comments here are saved as well. So these are any comments and suggestions in the chat box so we can follow up on.
Yeah, we've had kind of a mixed feedback in our survey regarding posting assignments on Friday versus on Monday. we had quite a bit of conversation regarding that. We also had quite a few students and parents that made comments about on the Friday, stressing them out about the weekend, but we also had people saying the weekend gave us additional time to work on them. So we're still trying to depend, we're having that debate on the Monday versus Friday release. So stay tuned for that. We don't have a definitive answer, but right now it's looking like it will most likely be Monday to get the start.
Okay. Will decisions by the local universities on how they offer instruction influence Pullman School District decisions?
Could you say that again, Shannon? It was a little hard to hear.
Yeah. Will decisions by the local universities on how they offer instruction influence Pullman School District decisions?
I think we're probably pretty similar right now in our models that we're looking at. From my understanding, the WSU is looking at some in-person classes and classes online. Right now, that's what we're looking at, is offering some classes face-to-face at least 2 days a week for secondary, at least 4 days a week for elementary, with online support. If we go totally online, then we'll have a very similar model.
Okay. Next question, will online learning be live to give an opportunity for students to interact with the teacher?
It will probably be a combination of asynchronous and synchronous videos. So I take it some of it will be live and some of it will be recorded.
Okay. How will the PSAT be handled if we move to online learning?
Say it again, Sarah.
Yeah, how will the PSAT be handled if we move to online learning?
It'll probably look like similar to the way that we did the testing with the ACT and SAT. So it'll probably be a shortened version is my guess, but we'll have to wait and see. At this point, we haven't had any additional information on that.
What are the guidelines to close school? Like, what are the deciding factors that would determine whether we do in person or if we close our schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that school closures will work is the Department of Health has the authority to make the decision on closing schools. Of course, the governor can also do that as well. So very similar, they're going to be monitoring the number of COVID cases, the number of hospital beds available, and if there are deaths that are occurring. That's going to be the determination on how they will decide whether school is going to be open or not. So they're going to take data from those three areas, and they will make a decision and let us know whether we're going to open school or not.
Okay. The next question, I heard that having an air filter with HEPA in each classroom would help. Do we have the money to purchase those for each classroom?
We should be receiving some CARES Act money, and I say should because we haven't seen any of it yet. We do have to apply for it. We were told originally we're going to get 100%, then it was 90%, now it's 80%. We have put in a personal protective equipment order with the state as a state buy. So we'll be getting those materials in August. One of the things with the filters, we'll have to see if that comes out as a recommendation from our health and safety group, but we are looking at our overall HVAC filters for the building. Some of the problems that we're running into with equipment such as individual HEPA filters for classrooms is the availability. And sometimes we found they say they are available, but then when you go to place an order, they're back ordered for 6 months to 8 months. So a lot of it's going to be depending on availability, also depending on the cost of each of those items.
Okay. Will senior projects be required for the class of 2021?
Currently, senior projects, that has evolved and changed. So we're calling it it has a different name. It's a culminating project. And so it'll be much more flexible, but it still will be required.
It says WCPH, which I believe is Whitman County Public Health, has said students don't need to wear masks during PE. Recommended but not required. Does that include during indoor PE?
Right now, my understanding from the Safety and Health Committee is that outside it would not be required, inside masks would be required for PE.
Okay. All right, if a student has to be quarantined at home, how will this affect their grades?
If they're quarantined at home, we're going to make every effort to make sure that there's not a negative impact to their grade. So we'll continue to make sure that we're making assignments available and time for them to make up that work.
Okay. If we are doing a hybrid of in-person and at home, will families be able to line up their students' schedules so that their students are at school during the same time and at home during the same time?
Yeah, right now we're looking at both the models so that if it's a half-day elementary where those students are off, that aligns with the middle school and high school. So, so siblings will be together and they'll be off together as well in the same days online learning.
Okay. So this is a really long one. What plans are being made to make sure that teachers who cannot or will not teach in person during a pandemic are able to continue teaching kids in our district?
So we're looking at a couple different options right now, and a lot of that's going to depend on some continuing information from both the state and the federal government. So there's a variety of different leaves and scenarios, and also they have to fit into what they call the high-risk category by CDC. So that'll involve individual conversation with that particular employee to see what types of accommodations can be made available. We are looking at, for some staff members that may fall into that category, they may be working on purely an online option, whether we're hybrid, online, and in person. We know we have some students that are medically fragile and will not be able to attend school in person even if we offered it. So we are looking at a whole separate online option. So that may be a place where a few of our employees can teach solely online.
Okay. What procedures do you expect for when a student or a staff member tests positive? Who will need to quarantine? Who will be required to get tested?
Yeah, great question. So this is going to be in consultation with the Department of Health. So if there is a positive, let's say student turns positive, so what we'll do is contact the Department of Health, or more likely the Department of Health will contact us to let us know that it's happened. They will ask for the seating chart. We will do, the Department of Health will do contact tracing and notify those students that were in closest contact with that student throughout the day. If it's a staff member, then that staff member will be quarantined, and then we'll have a substitute come in for that particular staff member.
Okay. There's about 48 more questions listed here. So just a heads up, we're going to get through as many as we can, but we may not be able to get to all of them. Will there be a Greyhound Gear Up in August at the high school? And you could probably also address the Lincoln Middle School startup.
Yes, we've had conversations with both Lincoln Middle School and PHS. They will be having Gear Up startup. It will be mostly virtual, but there will be some limited in person where students will be invited in different time slots to ensure social distancing. So they are working on those plans, and we hope to have those plans out hopefully within the next week or two. And we're also working on elementary open house, what that would look like. Most likely it's going to be a virtual open house.
Okay. I'm going to try to move through these pretty quickly. What are the biggest challenges your teaching staff faces for teaching online or for teaching hybrid?
I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be maneuvering back and forth between the two. And so we're working on hybrid schedules that would allow some additional time to help plan and make videos, for an example, and also receive targeted professional development on how to improve our online teaching. And also, when you're only teaching half your class each day, for example, in secondary, what's that look like? And so we'll be ramping up our professional development offerings for our staff.
Okay, will special education be the same as the rest of the school? So are there any different procedures that special education students may have?
Yeah, special education will be a little bit different. We're going to hopefully be offering more in-person for our special education students that absolutely need to have that in-person instruction in order to access their learning. And so we have also taken some additional protocols, and we're looking at spreading out the number of students, working with staff, and taking extra precautions with our safety and health measures. But we definitely want to have, even if we're online, our hope is that we're going to provide some face-to-face instruction with our special education students.
Okay. And this one you may not be able to answer. This is, what is the current science on transmission via paper? In particular, would it be safe for teachers to pass out papers during class?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing and what we're hearing from the health department is that surface as far as papers and that is less than what we originally thought, but we're going to continue to implement as much cleaning and sanitation protocols as possible to limit any transmission via touch. As we know, most of it, at least what we're hearing from the health department, is that it's the droplets in the air that's the most contagious.
Are there any travel restrictions for students and families?
There are no travel restrictions for students or families right now.
Let's see, a lot of these are very similar to ones that have been asked, so I'm going to skip over those. What happens if a child takes off their mask indoors and refuses to put it back on?
So with that scenario, I know the health and safety are working on that, so they'll be working with the building administrators on working with that student to get the mask back on or finding an alternative.
Okay. Will there be a change in the seating arrangements in classes?
The biggest change will be required seating charts. So we're also going to be, that's going to have an impact on movement in small groups, but we are working on some pod models for seating charts where more of the staff member would be doing more of the moving than the students would be. Or if the students are moving, they're moving in groups that are very, very small and stay the same. So it's very, very important. And the health department is adamant that we have to have required seating charts so they can do contact tracing. So seating charts will be a requirement. And I know that's very, very difficult for us in the educational world. But this is also a very unusual time and a very difficult time. So we have to make adjustments in order to be able to operate school under these current conditions.
Okay. Are there going to be any priorities made for in-person instruction, such as children of essential workers? And do you know the maximum size of classes for in-person instruction?
The size for classes is going to depend on the size of the room. We're pretty confident we can get between 16 and 20 students in, meeting the guidelines. Some classrooms will probably have to move to a bigger space. Right now, we have not heard any directions about essential worker or childcare for essential workers at this point.
Okay. Will you offer any type of synchronous teaching for online classes?
We're working on that, so I have not yet seen the recommendations coming out of the group, but I know that they are looking at that that particular area.
Okay. Question about what if you will be attending the meeting tomorrow with the health department and WSU?
Probably several of our staff will be attending that. I'm not sure if that's on my schedule right now because my schedule is very, very busy, but we will have a representative from the school district in that meeting. And that meeting will occur every week, by the way.
Shannon, I have a question for Bob. For students that are traveling back from an international country, and they have to be isolated for 14 days, how do they ask PHS for permission to be quarantined?
So if they're coming back from international, then they'll be quarantining for 14 days. They need to notify the high school or middle school or elementary school so we can make plans to make sure we can get them enrolled.
Okay, you kind of addressed this. Can you talk about what would cause elementary schools to go online only instead of a hybrid?
So again, that's going to depend on if cases keep rising in Whitman County, if hospital beds become full, if there are deaths in the county. That's going to be the trigger whether we're going to close school or not. Or that could be the governor coming out and saying we're closing schools, which has happened in this spring. So a lot's going to depend on how our community is dealing with the virus. If cases continue to climb, then it's going to be less likely that we're going to be in person.
Okay, will student teachers and practicum students from WSU be in our schools?
It'll be very, very limited. We've met with WSU, we've drawn up protocols and criteria. So again, it's going to be a very fluid situation. Student teachers will be allowed, depending on the safety conditions and what that will look like. Practicum students will be very, very limited, and they most likely will have a different experience, more virtual than in person. If school is in person, the number of people coming into the building is going to be very, very limited to essential business only. Volunteers will not be able to access buildings, so it's going to be very, very limited.
Okay, will a compromised teacher be able to teach online only?
I think that depends on the health and if they're healthy enough to teach online or if they're not healthy. So we're going to be working through those different scenarios.
Okay. If there's a hybrid option and an online only option, will there be dedicated online teachers, or will teachers be attempting to manage both in-person and online instruction for the online only students?
So if students are totally online, what we're looking at is having an online only option with a teacher. If it's a hybrid model, the teacher will be doing both the in-person and doing asynchronous or synchronous videos for the days where students are online.
If a family decides to homeschool their students, can they re-enroll them at any point during the school year?
They will be able to re-enroll, but it may be a delay in that process.
Let's see. If since we will be using Google Classroom, will parents be able to get accounts, especially for the middle school, to help guide their students and keep them accountable so that they can log in and see the same information their student is seeing?
We're working on all the details for that, so I don't have a solid answer on that, but we do know that we're going to try to standardize what that's going to look like, so it's not being used differently and have a different view. So we are working on refining that and also offering trainings for parents. As far as the accounts, I will look into that and see if we can get an answer.
Okay. And then do you want to cover again, you went through the 3 options or the 3 scenarios that we're working through. And there's a question, is it the choice of the parent between those 3 scenarios?
So I'll try to be a little bit clearer on the scenarios. So what we're looking at ideally to start the school year would be an in-person online hybrid. So students would attend school a few days a week, and be online a few days a week. That would be our offering. If the pandemic continues and things get to the point where school has to close, we'll go to an all online model. In addition to both of those, we're hoping to offer an online option for some students and families. And so we're looking at that. We don't have that detailed yet, but we will be sharing what that will look like, hopefully in the next couple weeks.
Okay. Can you repeat the physical distancing rules for buses and transportation?
So for buses and transportation, right now, the 6-foot rule does not apply. That said, if we're using a hybrid model to start school and only half the students are attending at the secondary each day, we'll be able to spread those students out on the buses. On elementary, that's going to be a little more difficult, spreading those students out. So we'll be taking a look at asking parents to consider walking routes or transporting their children if possible.
Okay. Have we been working with local daycares to accommodate online learning or staggered schedules?
I know that we are taking a look at trying to figure out how we can help coordinate and get that information out to them as soon as possible so we can let them know what on particular days it would look like.
Is school still planning to start on August 26th, and will the safety and cleaning equipment be available by then?
We're still scheduled to start on August 26th, where we are hoping that we're going to get all the materials in by the start of school. So we are planning to open up right now. We're in good shape. We seem to be on schedule.
Okay. The governor's current order is for groups of no larger than 10 people. Is it safe to assume schools will not open if there's no change to this order?
We are still being told that we will be able to open, even though the order is at 10 right now. That could change though, so stay tuned.
Okay. Let's see, working my way through here. Will there be people responsible for mask and distancing compliance?
All of us will be responsible for mask and social distancing compliance.
Okay. How will we be communicating if there's a positive case or an outbreak in the district or at a school?
So we are working on a letter and a series of different communications that if that comes to light. One of the difficulties is we have to be very careful about privacy. And so it may be a very general letter coming out saying at a particular school we've had a positive case. So we're working on those communications right now. The Health and Safety Committee is reviewing those correspondence letters this week.
Okay. If we move to full online only instruction, are small group in-person, perhaps optional activities being considered to address the social development needs of students?
Yeah, we are taking a look at that to see how we might be able to make that happen. Again, a lot's going to depend on where we are with the current rules and regulations.
If a staff member is required to quarantine, will they have to use their sick leave, or will their pay be docked, or will they be able to work from home?
So we're still looking at all those questions, and we're waiting to get some more guidance from the state on that particular area.
Okay. See, there is a question about kindergarten. Do we know about what kindergarten might look like? Is it going to look different? It just says, what about kindergarten children? So that's.
So kindergarten will look a little bit different than typically, and that having a seating chart, even though they do have seating charts in kindergarten, it's going to be looking at how we can do movement a little bit differently. So we'll be working on how that might look, but I know our kindergarten teachers are doing a great job in thinking about how we're going to approach this coming year if we have in-person instruction.
In middle school, are you considering moving teachers from class to class instead of the students moving?
Right now, it is looking like it'd be a combination. We might, for example, be having specialist travel from classroom to classroom. We're not sure. Middle school and high school, it's very difficult to have teachers move classrooms and kids sit together because their student schedules are so varied. But we are trying to follow the guidelines as close as possible to reduce movement and keep cohorts of students together as much as possible.
Will incoming kindergarten students and their parents be allowed to visit the classroom prior to starting school?
That's a great question. I think that we could probably set that up in a safe way, in a safe manner to make that happen. So we'll take a note of that so that we can have that addressed in our planning process.
Okay. If a teacher or student tests positive, will a sub be brought in and the class will not be quarantined? So who will be quarantined? Will there be a sub brought in if it's the teacher?
If a teacher tests positive, then obviously they will have to be quarantined. So if the class is still occurring, then we'd bring in a sub. Right now, what we're being told by the Department of Health is just because if a student tests positive, that doesn't mean we're going to close down that classroom and not have class. It's going to be on a very individual case-by-case basis.
Are school libraries and other spaces being turned into classrooms to help accommodate social distancing?
That may happen in some schools and not others. A lot's going to depend on the size of our classes.
Okay. All right, if we start fully online, can we move back to hybrid at some point? Like what would be the process between moving between the different models?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we're looking at is if we had to start online, hopefully we won't be online very long and we can go back to it. We can switch to a hybrid or full opening, go back to school. So again, that's going to depend on the recommendations of the health department, OSPI, and the governor.
Okay, will classroom observations be allowed?
Classroom observations, so it'll be following our policy and procedures that we have currently. It'll just look a little different being online.
Okay. All right, if a student is doing running start, will that work with coordinating schedules with the high school?
Hopefully that'll work, but I know running start is always a challenge as far as schedules. But right now, I would think it'd be similar to what we've had in the past. With the high school right now, we're looking at, if it's a hybrid, they'd be going at least 2 days a week to every class. And then 3 days would be online. So as we get that hybrid schedule solidified, we'll get that out so people can take a look at it.
Okay. Will masks be provided for students and staff?
Yeah, for staff, they will be provided. For students, we're asking that families provide those, but we are purchasing masks for students as well.
Okay. Will teachers be able to do rug area teaching?
They can do rug area teaching, I believe, as long as they're maintaining a 6-foot distance and it stays absolutely the same as far as the spots on the rug for those individual students. I can't make that clear enough. It is going to be very challenging, but it has to be the same for contact tracing. There is no wiggle room.
Okay. Let's see. If a traveler from a COVID hotspot country arrives in the United States, will they be allowed to travel inside the states using public transportation like planes and trains?
I have no idea on how to answer that question.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry, I'm working my way through here. How do teachers in the district plan on addressing or helping children that do not have support from family at home?
I think with something similar that we learned from the spring is making those connections and working with our building staff to provide some additional supports and help as needed. And so it's going to be very important to make sure that we have great communication going back and forth from school to home.
Okay, will K through 6 students be provided with tablets if they were required to go online only?
Yeah, they will be provided with a Chromebook. Yeah.
What would recess look like in the hybrid model?
So right now, I know the health and safety group is working on that. What they're looking at is that at recess, a class would stay together. So if you can think about a recess area, so in quadrants, you might have one class in quadrant 1, one in quadrant 2, 3 and 4, etc. But those classes would stay together during recess. So they're only interacting with their cohort group.
Okay. Let's see. What is the date that we hope to have the final plan to parents?
The subcommittees have to have their final recommendations into us by August 1st. It'll probably take us a couple days to go through those recommendations. So the board has to also approve the plan, and that plan has to also go to OSPI and State Board of Education at least 2 weeks before the start of school. So I'm really hoping that the second week in August, we'll have a very solid plan ready to roll.
Okay. What will be the process to deal with students that communicate a difficulty with breathing due to wearing masks all day?
Yeah, like I said, there are some medical exceptions to that mask, and in that case, students would be asked to wear a face shield.
Okay. Will we still have morning tutoring with WSU students before school?
Right now, that is not in the plans.
There was a question about watching this Zoom again. The video is being recorded and it will be posted online in case you missed any questions or if you want to share this with anyone else. Let's see, there's a question. Can families opt to do online only?
We're hoping to have that offering for families, yes.
Will students be able to use math manipulatives if they have their own set at their own desk?
Yeah, if they have their own set at their own desk, they'll be able to use those math manipulatives. We're going to be trying really to have everything they need. They don't have to pass around or share. So for manipulatives, then they would have their own set and they would use those. And we would clean those as well. So.
Okay. We are about running out of time. There's a couple more questions. Do you have a couple more minutes or do you need to?
Yeah, I have a couple minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Are local pediatricians involved with the subcommittee groups?
Yes.
Okay. See, yes, it will be on YouTube. The video will be posted there. Is there any funding from any source for supplementary learning for students who need extra tutoring help?
Right now, what we have is based on our title and lap funding. We're always taking a look at some other options as well. So there may be some additional funding for that coming.
Okay. All right, last question, then we're going to wrap it up. How would families opt to have their students do online only?
We'll be sending out a notification on how they would sign up, and we want to make sure they know exactly what that will look like. So stay tuned for more information. We'll be working on putting that together.
Okay, awesome. That was the last question. Thank you to everyone who submitted. There were a lot of them. And if you have additional questions that you want follow-up on, please feel free to send those to me or to Bob. and we will do our best to answer those.
Thank you very much. I want to say that we also have an FAQ on our website, so please check there as well. Your question may be there as well, long as an answer. I would check often because things seem to be changing almost daily again. So this is really a challenging time, and I do appreciate everyone attending today. I will be doing another Zoom chat at least within the next 2 weeks, if not sooner. I do want to try to keep you up to date as much as possible, and this seems to be a very a nice way to do that. So appreciate all your time today, appreciate your questions and comments, and I apologize for not having all the answers, but sometimes when I have the answer, the next day it changes. So appreciate your patience. We are doing our best, and we will continue to work hard, and our groups are really working hard to try to put together 3 different plans to work to open school in a very short time. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and go Pullman. Stay safe, stay healthy.